So, every year for me, there's two big speaking events. One is Social Media Marketing World in the spring, and the other is Social Tools Summit in the fall, which I'm also a co-founder of together with Brian Mahoney. So today, I really wanted to sort of summarize my latest feelings, which are going to cover a lot of the different topics that are being featured today. And it comes down to a realization, I feel, and I'm going to show you some case studies, both from my clients as well as those that are available on the internet, that a lot of success in digital and social is going to come about from something which I'll call, for lack of a better word, alignment. I won't introduce myself. I do social media for a living, and there's Jay Baer and Mark Schaefer. There's some great famous influencers out there that you probably know. I teach social media at Rutgers University. I fly back to Ireland every year to teach at the Irish Management Institute. I consult. I have an agency, co-founder of this event, and I will stop there. So let's get to the content. I think if we look back at the history, social media marketing, we're almost a decade into this, right? This is not new stuff anymore. It's almost getting a little bit ancient. And when I thought about what are some of the key words, the calls to action that others in the industry have told us to do as marketers, right? I reached back to Dave Kerpen, and Dave is significant for this event because he was our first keynote speaker 2 years ago. And it was all about companies need to be likable. Well, I think we've gone way beyond that. Then we had Brian Solis, one of the most amazing people you'll ever meet. This was some time ago when he wrote this book about engage. It's not about being liked, it's about the fact that businesses need to engage. I still think very few businesses proactively engage with social media users, but I digress. I think a new keyword is align. And I hope that if there's one thing you take away from this presentation, I'm going to show you 5 different areas where I believe just a little bit of alignment between your company and some of the topics I'm going to talk about and some of the advice are going to reap your company a lot of rewards in 2018 and beyond. And the fact of the matter is, there's still many in marketing that still live in this world, where communication channels were limited before the internet. You all know these traditional channels. The thing is, though, if you're a new company, you go straight to the new reality today, the digital social. Now, there was a statistic released about 6 months ago. I didn't see it come up in the blogosphere or on Twitter. I just happened to find it. It was that the advertising revenue of Google and Facebook combined is now greater than all of the newspaper, radio, and magazine companies' ad revenues combined. We are living in a digital-first, social-first, and mobile-first society. And some places like Asia are even more mobile first, or they've been that way for a decade, yet I believe that a lot of marketers still fall behind because they don't have this mindset. This is why you see these new companies come out of nowhere, and they're incredibly successful. I call it social media growth hacking, but they're incredibly successful at social because they don't have the legacy of this. So part of it is this mindset, and I'm hoping these 5 tips I'm going to give about alignment will help you all. You probably are all going to get this, but help you convince others in your company to do the same. So it's funny, I go to Japan on business a few times a year, and if you look at this digital transformation, Japan is actually way behind where we are in the US. And I just like to look at things, my background is more in the sales and biz dev than marketing and PR side, so I just like to cut things down, look at it simply. What is the digital transformation? Well, it starts with a website, check. Search engine marketing, check. Content marketing is still relatively new in Japan. I don't think it's that new here in the States. I mean, Joe Polizzi's been writing about it for like a decade. We've got Ann Handley here in Boston. But some companies are still increasing their investment in it. Email marketing, check. It's really the last two, the social media marketing and what I'm going to call digital relationship marketing, which I also call leverage the other, which are still being developed. Obviously, here I think we have a more advanced crowd, but in Japan at least, they're still really, really far behind. But I want to cover the social inside digital. Sometimes when you mention social, people, if you mention digital, it's more mainstream. They'll put more budget in it than they would in social. So I like to say social is obviously part of digital. And I first want to look at the areas where it most overlaps, starting with content. Because content is the currency of digital and social media. As a company, you have to publish to be active and engage in social. You have to have something to say. You can't say how was dinner last night, although some brands try to get away with it. You need content of various types. And at the end of the day, content also helps you build trust. I'm a firm believer in new tools, old rules. People still do business with people they know, like, and trust, or businesses they know, like, and trust. And the way they trust businesses has changed over time, but content plays this critical role in being liked, in being trusted, and because some of these social networks are search engines of their own, of being found and being known. The problem, though, is although companies are investing more in content, it's still using the traditional marketing perspective. I was at Adobe Summit earlier this year where I got to see Joe Pulizzi speak again, and if you haven't seen him speak, you should. 90% of content created in mid to large companies are about the company. Only 10% is audience-centric. If your content is not audience-centric, unless you're a celebrity or you're a huge brand where you already have a built-in fan base, that top 1% of social media users, perhaps, but for most companies, we need to align ourselves more with our audience and create more audience-centric content. In fact, I'm going to talk a little bit more about social selling. When sales and marketing are aligned, and that's going to be my tip number 5, it's not, obviously, marketing needs to generate leads, but now it's becoming more about the buyer's journey and how do we create better content to help our customer at each stage of the buyer's journey. The audience is going to be different than if you're a consumer-facing brand, if you're a nonprofit, but the alignment is still necessary. So it's about creating content at every stage of the buyer's journey. Sounds simple. I think the successful companies are getting it and are doing it, and it becomes critical when you think of the sales enablement role, and I'm going to get to that later for the B2B companies out there, to do. And if you're a consumer-facing brand, Red Bull is one of the most successful companies in social, and they don't talk about themselves at all. They talk about the lifestyle that they promote. So if you're a consumer-facing brand, and I'll talk about visual as well, it's a lot easier to have a visual face, but it has to be about the audience. And I think this Red Bull, and they use traditional media as well, but it's all about the audience and the desires of the audience, and indirectly through that, generating demand for their product. So tip number 1, very simple, not easy to do sometimes, but align your content with your audience needs and use that as a barometer for how you go forward on your editorial calendar, both in social media and for, bless you, and for all your content marketing needs. Number 2, social media marketing, organic and paid. I think a lot of people forget that probably the number of Instagram users is equivalent to maybe Snapchat and Twitter users combined these days. It has really grown to be the second largest social network by far, yet so many companies are so far behind in visual social. Part of the problem, I worked recently with an insurance company in the Midwest, and they said, Neil, how do we do better at Instagram? They're creating all their content on a PC. Social media users are not creating content on a PC. They're creating it on their phone. So maybe putting your feet, putting your fingers, putting your device, and acting as an Instagram user would is going to help you become more aligned with Instagram users and with social media users. And I could talk about Pinterest, and I think the last panel had a lot of great points about visual social. Every company at this stage needs a visual voice. Even if you don't think Instagram is for you, you're maybe a niche B2B company, and I'm seeing them on Instagram as well, you need to have a visual voice because as many of the panelists were saying before, you're not going to tweet or post without having an image attached to it these days if you want to be successful in social. That's how you dupe the algorithms, the edge ranks, and what have you. That's what people engage with. That's what gives you more real estate on everybody's newsfeed. And I've seen really boring, quote-unquote, B2B companies be very successful. Maersk Shipping is one of the case studies I always use. You see a sample of their photos on the bottom right. They were a boring company in a boring industry. But when they were doing brainstorming about how they can visually represent their brand, they realized that almost everyone has seen one of these containers at some point in their life. So they really leveraged that. 12 months later, they won a digital marketing award as being one of the best European companies at digital and social a few years ago. So I think it's a challenge, but every company can develop their visual voice. We also just before heard, and it was a great question, how do I get my graphic team to create more content for social? This is a visual social audit I did for a social media team who had to use graphics being supplied by their ad department. And they had to have me come in and fly to Florida and do a 2-hour workshop with all their marketing executives to get them aligned on the same page, right? So doing a visual voice audit, as I like to call them, reveals a lot of really, really interesting facts. Nordstrom was one of their competitors. Well, let's look at Nordstrom. How would I describe this? Well, first of all, if you go into a Nordstrom, they sell lots of different things. But guess what? On Instagram, they realize that female fashion is most aligned with their audience. They're not posting men's stuff. Well, at least at the time that I did the audit, they weren't. They're not posting home furnishings. It's all female fashion. You'll notice that they also have a lot of natural backgrounds. Grass, wood. I mean, there is some brick and cement there, but it's almost like they go out of their way to make sure they have one of these backgrounds. The other interesting thing is they will not show a full face. They have defined, maybe they want the appeal for everything they sell to be universal and not show a face. We go to Sephora, and they're all about faces. They're also about these really, really creative images that I don't think you'll see many ad departments create. The other interesting thing is they do reposts. Now, the repost on Instagram is not supported natively by Instagram, obviously, as Twitter is with retweets. And Twitter didn't used to natively support retweets either. But the repost, and more importantly, leveraging user-generated content is really, I think, one of the key ways to align your visual voice with those of your audience. All these people are talking about the challenges of creating visual content. You don't have to create it all yourself. Disneyland, they have the money to create it, but they realized they couldn't compete with the authenticity and the numbers of their fan base. And many companies now leverage user-generated content for 100% of their Instagram imagery because this visual voice is difficult to create and it's more authentic when it comes from the user. In fact, I would argue that the future of social content isn't even about your own content. It's about leveraging user-generated content, and I know brands are now starting to leverage this for their own paid social, their own social advertisements using our own photos, which makes a lot of sense, right? So align your visual voice with social media users. I only have 5 minutes left to get through 3 more, so I'm going to talk a little bit faster. So digital relationship marketing. I used to call this leverage the other. It's all about, as a brand, you are one person in a sea of hundreds of millions of users on a big ocean, but there's a lot of people out there that can help you. Employees, fans, and influencers. Let's talk about employees. Employee advocacy was a big boom 1-2 years ago. We used to have tons of employee advocacy tools at this summit, and it's changed over time. But has employed media really become the 4th type of media? I don't know. But the fact is that we all use social media, and as we age and as millennials become a majority of the workforce, social media really is a mainstream tool being used by all professionals. And guess what? We trust other people we know the most. Trust them more than we trust PR, CEOs, what have you. And on certain social networks like LinkedIn, if you want to take advantage of the algorithm, if you want to publish a blog post, it has to come from a user, not from a company. So we're seeing a shift of marketers creating employee advocacy programs, hoping that everybody participates, trying to shove promotional content down employees' throats, and it doesn't work. In fact, a lot of employee advocacy tools are now calling themselves either social selling tools or they're calling themselves employee engagement tools. And I think the employee engagement thing is a critical one. And I know that we have Martin Jones from Cox in the background. They're one of these companies that actually train their employees on how to use social. I'm being hired by companies to train their salespeople, even if they don't use social professionally, how to use it. It becomes part of the reality that we change jobs over time, but we want to retain advocates. We want our employees to be employees for life. And wherever they go, we want them to speak positively about us in social media. That might be a greater ROI than simply trying to get more clicks or more impressions in the near term. So align your employee advocacy program with the needs and the wants of your employees. Sounds hard to do, like I said, but it takes a different mindset in order to achieve. Let's talk about influencer marketing. Influencer marketing is the hottest trend right now. It's also the reason why my next book, my 4th book, is going to be about the topic of influencer marketing called The Business of Influence. Instagram alone, $1 billion market, $1 billion going into influencers, expected to double in 2 years. And I know the second keynote after me is going to be about influencer marketing. We have people that came from nowhere that now get more than $10,000 per post. And influencer marketing is not just B2C brands. I've seen a big pickup starting this year in B2B brands leveraging influencers because it's the same thing. We trust other people that we know more than we trust businesses, PR, CEOs. And anybody can be an influencer these days, right? But when a lot of companies look to bring on influencers, I don't think they're spending enough time realizing, are they a good fit for the company? Because we have this buy influence versus build influence debate. You don't hear about this debate often in influencer marketing because most brands and agencies are pushing people to buy influence. because it's easy to do. They make money. There's a marketplace. Hire someone, X dollars a post, X dollars an image. You get X number of impressions. And if you want to look at influencer marketing like paid social and you want to use the same KPIs, that's awesome. But really, the long-term ROI comes from engaging organically with influencers, building a long-term relationship, and actually transforming influencers into becoming true advocates of your business. And sometimes, I'm a firm believer that every business has an influencer. Even if you're a B2B company, you need to brainstorm to find them. I'm working with a hair dye company, and the hair dye company's like, we gotta connect with consumers. We gotta reach out to influencers. They have a network of influencers. Who are they? They are the hairstylists that are using their dyes that are really successful at Instagram. Instead of trying to reach out to people we don't know, and in this case, they're not employees per se, but they are partners. They're part of the ecosystem. So I want you to think really hard who in your ecosystem is already an influencer. Before reaching out to someone new, reach out to someone where it's a win-win relationship for your influencer marketing. So align your relationships with what I call true influencers. Getting to the final point, because I know we're all getting hungry for lunch. There's one more thing that we don't talk about a lot, and it really brings together content, it brings together social, it brings together employee advocacy. It's social selling, and it's specifically alignment between sales and marketing. And social selling, if you're a B2B company, has really brought sales and marketing together more and more. It's not siloed anymore. There's a reality that when we don't have sales and marketing alignment, there's a lot of frustration, there's a lot of waste, there's a lot of leads that don't get converted. But I like to say sales is becoming more like marketing, and marketing is becoming more like sales. And when I talk to a lot of sales and marketers in B2B companies, they often nod their head when they see that. The new sales and marketing relationship revolves around content, whether it's for social selling, for social enablement, sales enablement, for account-based marketing. It all revolves around content, and it all revolves around alignment between sales and marketing to understand what is the best content to create to enable the sales force. And I just want to share with you one long quote, but it's one way of looking at sales and marketing alignment in a very, very fresh perspective. At our company, sales looks at the web analytics data and gives suggestions for optimizing pricing data, while marketing has Salesforce access to calculate eventual results of their actions. Both teams talk often to bounce around ideas, find revenue bottlenecks, and fix them at different stages of the customer's lifestyle. Requires the CEO's focus, requires executive buy-in, right? To keep the two functions tightly integrated. But once you set the culture, it happens by itself. This is really the ideal that I hope, if you're a B2B company, that you'll strive for after today. And the benefits of having aligned sales and marketing, you can Google that term and you'll find similar results to what I've seen, are tremendous. And this actually, of the 5 points, may be the most significant in terms of revenue and profit for your organization. So, align your sales and marketing. So those are 5 tips, 5 points. Which one will you take back home and better align your company, your sales, your marketing in the rest of 2017 and the rest of 2018 and beyond? What you saw there, I actually launched just closing notes, I actually launched a social selling for executive program at Rutgers University that's launching the spring semester 2018. I talked 2 hours just about sales and marketing alignment alone, so it's a lot of content. Definitely check that out if you're interested. And I'm about to actually announce the pre-order for my new book, The Business of Influence. If you'd like to become part of it, looking for case studies, etc., please ping me. And that's it. I think we're all ready for lunch. I'm going to be around if you have any questions. I thank you for being a great audience, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much.